Well, we have some interesting news about the Jeffrey Epstein files. One that I think is going to shock some of you. This goes all the way back to the Trump administration's first term. It has now been announced that a journalist that was covering the Epstein files, that was interviewing Epstein victims, was tracked by the Trump administration during his first term. This is a big one, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead and bring it in. The journalist's name is Julie K. Brown. So I saw this last night on X, and I was like, whoa, what is this all about? Does somebody at the DOJ want to tell me why my American Airlines booking information and flights in July 2019 are part of the Epstein files attached to a grand jury subpoena? As the flight itinerary includes my maiden name and I did book this flight, why was the DOJ monitoring me? So this is Julie Brown. We can go to her page here. She is a Miami Herald journalist. And again, she was investigating the Epstein files. And notice it says here, the journalist whose investigation led to the arrest of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And I saw this on X last night, and I said to myself, okay, let's look at this. Here is her itinerary, and it does say American Airlines confidential for official use only. I know it's very small, you guys, but I can see it here. Passenger information, name, and of course, she had to black that out there. The flights, where she was going. And I want to get to our Substack as well, because she did dive into this in a little bit more detail. So this happened during the Trump administration's first term, the 2016 term. So at that point in time, different DOJ, but still under the Trump administration, of course. Why were they tracking her flights? This isn't someone that was a part of Epstein's sick cycle of abuse. She wasn't a part of his circle. She wasn't a part of his cabal. She was a journalist, and they were tracking her flights. Let's see where she's going. What if something would have happened to this woman? You see what I mean? Now let's go ahead and get into the article, because she wrote about it here in much more detail. My flights are in the Epstein files. I'll make it bigger for you. My flights are in the Epstein files. Why is a flight itinerary I booked in June 2019 part of the Epstein files? Let's get into this here. I expected my name to be in the Epstein files since the Miami Herald published the series Perversion of Justice, an unsparing look at how Jeffrey Epstein got away with his crimes in South Florida. And that series led prosecutors in Southern District of New York to open a criminal probe just days after the series ran in late November 2018. So I just want to interject here. People do need to remember that Jeffrey Epstein had crimes in Florida before he had those crimes on his private island. So this is someone that the FBI, like, they knew about him for a long time. They knew about him for a while. They let him continue doing what he was doing. Let's go on more. And there are plenty of references to my stories in the Epstein files. But what I didn't expect to see was an American Airlines flight record from 2019 with my full name on them, including my maiden name, which I don't use professionally. It's an unusual name, so it's clear it's me. The document appears to be details of the itinerary for a series of flights I booked in July, just before the SDNY and the FBI arrested Jeffrey Epstein. And you can see here, again, she has that flight itinerary. And again, it says American Airlines confidential for official use only. So you literally had the Trump administration tracking down a journalist that was trying to get justice for victims of Jeffrey Epstein. And so instead of tracking down the criminals, instead of tracking down and following those who were abusing women, those who were participating in the trafficking, those who just corrupt and very wealthy. They were tracking down a journalist trying to cover that story. This is the gangster paradise that I was referring to, guys. The rich get away with whatever they want to get away with for the most part. And even when they are taken down, it's usually not the head of the snake. It's usually someone that is under that head of the snake, and the cycle continues. And speaking of the cycle continuing, I'm going to tell you something else about this that was also just released in these files. The itinerary was among about 6 to 8 others, including an August 2019 flight itinerary for Ghislaine Maxwell. Most of the names attached to the other itineraries are redacted. This could perhaps be because they were victim names. They are all attached to a grand jury subpoena signed in February 2020 by a records custodian for American Airlines. You can see here, declaration of custodian of records. So you can see all that here. That was executed on February 5th, 2020. And then here it says airlines. So you can see, where was I going? This was a flight booked to interview Epstein victims Maria and Annie Farmer on or about July 8th. As it turned out, I was unable to go. The night before I was set to travel, we learned that Epstein was arrested as he arrived in his private plane at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. He was set to appear in court in New York in a matter of hours. Maria Farmer, who was the first to report Epstein to the FBI in 1996, and her younger sister, Annie, were both sexually assaulted by Epstein and Maxwell. I had hoped to interview them for my series in 2017, but they weren't able for various personal reasons. My editor made the decision for me to fly to New York for Epstein's arraignment and reschedule the interview. So I never took the flight. Pause here for just a second. I wonder what would have happened if she would have gotten on that plane. You hear about people disappearing. You hear about random things happening on flights. I wonder what would have happened. Listen, it has not been unknown before for elite, powerful people to take out an entire group of people to get one person. So I wonder what would have happened if she would have actually gotten on that plane. I just wonder. You may not even know about this person today. Let's go into this part here. I have no idea whether the DOJ was monitoring me or whether it was monitoring Annie and Maria. Either way, the DOJ has some explaining to do. I'm not sure why they would have been monitoring any of us during that time span. I'm sure. Because they wanted to stop what you wanted to report. They wanted to be able to prevent that from happening. Again, the Epstein files don't just talk about the victims, people who were abused by Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. It also talks about rich, powerful people who also participated in these activities. Some of them have connection to Israel, just like Jeffrey Epstein did. We all know Jeffrey Epstein was Mossad. So the government is going to do whatever it can to protect powerful people, especially those that are involved in foreign affairs. Now, here's another question, and we'll get to Annie and Maria in just a second. Amber Speak shared this on X. Newly released files show the FBI received official survivor reports alleging abuse by Epstein and his network as recently as 2020. Read that again. He was dead. The network is not. And this is something I've been saying for quite some time. Just because Jeffrey Epstein is quote unquote dead, and I asked this question recently, do we know for sure that Jeffrey Epstein is dead? People might think that's silly, but I don't. How is it that they were receiving reports as recently as 2020 and Jeffrey Epstein was dead, which goes to show you that just because Jeffrey Epstein, they came after him, that doesn't mean that the activity is not continuing. That doesn't mean that that network is over. And you can see the report here. FBI intake, November 2020. You see this? Now, this says residential address is in Norway. They got the internet protocol listed here as well. Online tips. Look at what it said. I suffered massive human trafficking. It started as a young child. Goes on to say here, the royalties in Norway, Gunhild, it's hard to read this, guys, because it's really, the print is really light. Gunhild Stordalen, Petter Stordalen, Kajil Roke, Jen Stolenberg, Jonas Story. I don't know if I'm pronouncing these correctly. Sorry. And others tried to put me into a coma. They wanted to make me disabled. I need help. I've been involved with Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. Listen to this. There is no help to get. I need help. I have been involved with Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. I was a billionaire and people stole this fortune and tried to disqualify me. This came through in 2020. 2020. So how do we know that that activity stopped? I don't think it did. Now let's get back to this point about Maria and Annie Farmer. Maria Farmer was one of the ones, she came forward very, very early on, 1996, and had the DOJ listen to Maria Farmer, these future abuses that continue to happen would have been prevented if they would have listened to her. But honestly, I sit back and I think about it like this, like, honestly, who's to say they didn't know this stuff was going on all along and they were just keeping it shh, hush. It's a mafia. It's a gangster paradise. I want you to listen to what Maria Farmer said when she was on, this was a while ago, when she was on CBS This Morning, and she was talking about the cameras that were at Jeffrey Epstein's estate. This is the townhouse in New York. Listen to this.
In this country, one of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers is providing chilling new insight into his alleged sex trafficking operation. Maria Farmer says Epstein sexually assaulted her more than 20 years ago. She filed a lawsuit against the Epstein estate just 6 days ago. In her first TV interview, Farmer alleged that Epstein had extensive surveillance inside his home, including tiny pinhole cameras. He showed you cameras throughout the house.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The main thing he did when I walked in, I thought was interesting, he showed me where the men monitoring everything were. So if you're facing the house, there's a window on the right that's barred. That's the room, the media room is what he called it.
Did you guys hear what she just said? He showed her the room where the men were that were monitoring all the activity. So this guy got everybody on camera. If at any point you entered that vicinity, you were on camera at some point or another. Now we're going to get to the part where she said she saw Donald Trump, but let's go ahead and continue. High surveillance.
Yeah. And so there was a door that looked like an invisible door with all this limestone and everything, and you push it and you go in, and I saw all the cameras. What it was like old televisions, basically, like stacked, but they were monitors inside this cabinet. And there were men sitting here, and I looked on the cameras and I saw toilet, bed, toilet, bed. I'm like, I am never going to use the restroom here, and I'm never going to sleep here. It was very obvious that they were like monitoring private moments.
She believes there are tapes. The question is, who has them? Tomorrow, we'll have much more of my interview with Maria Farmer, including how she is continuing the fight for justice.
So that is Maria Farmer. And she was very brave to come forward when she did in 1996. I mean, this is before Virginia Giuffre, before other people started to come forward, but nobody would listen to her. Jeffrey Epstein went on to abuse more and more women. And as I said before, all that surveillance was for blackmail purposes, in my opinion. Now, let's get to the part here where she said that she saw Donald Trump there. This is important.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on, Aaron. I really appreciate it, because I need to say up front that I've waited 3 decades to be able to even be heard about this, because the government has not held any of the people I reported accountable. And so basically the night before I went in before I began working for Epstein. He called me at very late in the evening and asked me to come up to the Helmsley Palace offices. And I didn't even have money for a subway token. It's kind of embarrassing. So I had to go running up there. And so I told Epstein, I'll be up there. It'll probably take me until like 9. He's like, okay. So I get there and I'm waiting. It's dark. Like there's no light on in the offices. And I thought that was really weird. So I'm seated against the wall in the main part of the offices and just waiting for Epstein. And he says, I'll be out in a minute, and he's got the door closed. And then a few minutes later, this man walks in a business suit, kind of tall, imposing. And I immediately was like, that's Donald Trump. What's he doing here? I'm supposed to be working for Epstein and interviewing with him. Why is Donald Trump here? And he walked up about, a few feet from me and just stood over me in a very imposing way and looked at me like he was in on some secret or something. It was really weird, like smirking kind of. And I felt threatened. So I made an ugly face. And when I made that ugly face, Epstein walked out from the offices on this side. Trump's standing here, I'm here. And he walks out of his office and he goes, oh, no. He was laughing at me. And he goes, she's not here for you.
Well, she's not here for you. Now, remember, Maria Farmer was an art student, and she, again, came forward and said that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell abused her. So she came forward very early, many years ago. But listen to that part there. She's not here for you. And that was with Donald Trump. And some people don't want to admit this. Some people don't want to. And like I said, Donald Trump's hands are not clean. Whether he sexually abused or whatever other women that were there, his hands are not clean. And that's part of the reason why he didn't want this information to get out. That's why he came forward and said, oh, it's just a Democrat hoax. That's why he said, oh, the guy was a creep. There's nothing to see here. Just let it go. And it wasn't until, like I said, if it wasn't for the breaking of Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene breaking away from their own party and joining along with Ro Khanna to pursue this, I don't even think you get this much information from the files that you've received today. Now, they're not going to show us everything. They're never going to show you everything. But I don't even think we even get this far. Because if it was just Ro Khanna and let's say a couple other Democrats, well, then the Republicans will just say, see, it's just a Democrat thing. It's just a Democrat thing. What changed that was MTG and Thomas Massie breaking away from their party and choosing to work alongside Ro Khanna. And that's what made things more damning. So when I tell people that it's a cult, it's a cult. And I'm going to get into this when I get into when you see the story later today about Alex Jones. This is what I've been trying to tell people about this cult of party mentality. This idea that like you can't say anything negative about the party. So if someone in the party does something that's bad, you're just supposed to say it was the Democrats. You're just supposed to excuse it. Oh, it's not true. It's fake news and da 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 da. And while I have plenty of criticism of the media, there is a cult-like mentality with these political parties.
Follow me, right? And he escorts him in to this other room. And I always wondered, who was she in there? Was someone in there, right? And I have no way of knowing, nothing. But I felt very intimidated because I had on running shorts and I was vulnerable, sweaty, just a nobody in an office with these two men. That it felt very predatory and uncomfortable. I have to say that when I made that ugly face, he backed off. It wasn't like he was aggressive after that, but he made a really vulgar comment following. And I don't know if it was like, like locker room talk in the 90s, the way men were, but he made a joke to Epstein. Oh, I thought she was 16. And I thought that was so strange because at the time my sister was 15 actually. And I didn't think it was funny, even though it was just a little bit inappropriate. But I thought I don't know what it was, but
Everybody hear this? So here's the thing. Maria and Annie, didn't come from money. They were, from what Maria said at that time, she was just trying to get by in New York. She said she was broke. These men tend to prey on women, young girls that are coming from families that don't have money. That was something that I noticed. All the victims that I heard from, that they had in common, they were either coming from a broken home, single parent home, or they were coming from an environment that was chaotic, a class issue. They were seeking out those that were part of a lower class that would want the money, need the money more so than others. Now, when we get to her sister came forward fairly recently. Also, she was on CBS Mornings about a month ago. She said at that time that she was somewhat hopeful that justice would be served with these files being released. Listen to this.
Released all of its files on Jeffrey Epstein. Joining us now is Annie Farmer. She testified that she was sexually abused by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell when she was just 16 years old. Farmer is a psychologist, who now works with trauma survivors. Annie, thank you so much for joining us. I can't imagine the emotions you're feeling right now. Try, if you can, to put it into words. Is it vindication? Is it validation? What is it that you're feeling today?
I think it's both. This feels like a victory, a long overdue victory in a fight that many people have fought, and it feels great.
Mm-hmm.
But it's bittersweet, because of, I think, what it took for us to get to this moment.
I know. Let's talk about what it took, because your sister Maria was also a victim. In fact, Maria was one of the first back in 1996 to call attention to this matter about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And now we sit here over 30 years later.
Yeah.
Do you think that finally we will get transparency? Do you believe that?
I feel very hopeful at this moment that will happen. And in part, I feel hopeful not because I have a lot of trust in the political process, but because of what I've seen, what is possible when people come together and demand something and pressure is placed by the American people here. I mean, we heard.
Let's pause here for a second. Did everyone notice what she just said? When people come together and there are demands, this is what we continue to say on the show. Eric came up with 11 demands for justice, and you have to have demands, and people have to come together. And that's what I think, the wealthy, the elites, the gangster paradise, they've been trying to stop. They don't want us to come together. They don't want us to have these demands. So they have to keep us divided, and they use different tools to do this. But at the end of the day, you have to have demands. This is why, I kind of laugh, like when people say things like, oh, yay, we need to have this, we need to have that. But then they'll support and vote for politicians that don't meet any of those demands. Not trying to come together with people is another one too, right? So one of the things I noticed, listening to Annie and Marie Farmer, and I can't play their whole story because there's some parts that are very disturbing, so I can't play it on here. But these women are broken, and the fact that you have politicians or political party that claims to care about family values, just saying, just shoo this away, nothing to see over there. That in itself should wake people up from the cult. That should be a warning sign to everybody. But people have convinced themselves that they have nothing without these parties. People have convinced themselves that they have to be a part of the political process in this way, and you don't. And I think that's the biggest mistake. That's the biggest downfall. Donald Trump's hands are not clean. Donald Trump, what did I show you over the past year or so? Donald Trump was closer to Jeffrey Epstein than he tried to pretend. He lied about his relationship when it ended. It didn't end when he said it did. So he was not just running cover for his friends. He was also running cover for himself.
Yesterday from lawmakers that they have almost never received this many phone calls from constituents saying, we care about this, we want this to happen. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. I appreciate everyone who spoke out about this.
Okay, so that's Annie Farmer. She says that, you know, she's hopeful. And like I said, it's not just Epstein. It's not just Ghislaine Maxwell. It's a whole global network. If you haven't had a chance to do so, read Whitney Webb's books called One Nation Under Blackmail. You can get them on Amazon. There's volume 1 and there's volume 2. Whitney Webb exposed a lot of this years ago when people were calling her conspiratorial. And now I think that she's been vindicated. So the fact that the Trump administration was tracking a journalist that was covering the Epstein story at that time is very, very, very suspect. And everybody needs to be looking at that. Because again, why do you need to track this person? Think about that. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.